Good day, everyone. I'm your host, Lee Judge, and welcome to today's webinar entitled, What Makes an Exceptional Chatbot? A question and answer webinar brought to you by Jacada. As a note, to honor the privacy of our attendees, only your name will appear in the attendee window. Today's webinar, as we mentioned, is an interactive webinar designed to answer your questions about customer service chatbots. The questions featured today have been submitted by you, the attendees, during registration. Also, our Q&A window is open on your WebEx screen, so please feel free at any time to type additional questions in that Q&A window during the event. Today we will discuss questions around chatbots, virtual customer assistants, and artificial intelligence solutions. Many of the questions have already been reviewed by our panelists, and they have already had a chance to prepare some thoughts to share with you today. So let's introduce our panel. Our presenters today are Nicholas Koczkowski, an intelligent assistant and chatbot market specialist, as well as former CMO at Genesis. Also, we have Coumadin Chamuhan, Vice President of Solutions at Jacada. As well, sitting in for Dylan Mills, whose wife's about to have a baby right now, we have Michael Haston, Senior Solutions Consultant here at Jacada. So starting with Nicholas, gentlemen, please further introduce yourselves.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. I'm a consultant and fractional CMO. I work with startups and B2B software companies. I focus on technologies to communicate with customers, to engage them. Like you mentioned, I'm a veteran of the customer service industry. I spent 13 years at Genesis at different capacities. And last but not least, I'm the author with Opus Research, the Intelligent Assistant and SmartBot market landscape. So we created the first version 3 years ago. It's now in its fourth edition, and it's particularly relevant to today's topic. Thanks.
Thank you. Michael?
Sure. Thanks, Lee. My background is in self-service and customer experience as well. I spent about 8 to 9 years at Earthlink, which is the internet service provider here in the U.S., when I was managing their self-service activities as well as alternative care channels. And then from there I moved to, I've spent time at a few different technology providers, including working on things such as omni-channel, cloud contact center, social media customer care, and then I've moved on to Jacada, specializing in primarily self-service activities here.
Hello everyone, I'm Coumadin Chamuhan. I'm responsible for solutions at Jacada. It's a pleasure to have your time today. We're really looking forward to answering your questions and can't wait to get started.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Before we begin, I'll mention one more time for those who have just logged in. To honor the privacy of our attendees, only your name will appear in the attendee window. So let's begin. Here's our first question of the day. We'll go to this one. How have chatbots changed over the last few years, and how will they change in the future? Nicholas?
Yeah, thanks. If we look back in the mirror, there's really 3 technologies that have reached the kind of the maturity tipping points, and together have enabled this new form of bots. First is NLP and NLU, natural language processing and understanding. And what those technology maturity has done is it has started to make machine-to-human interaction much more conversational. Second, chatbot, like the name suggests, started on the web in the chat channel. And the second set of technologies that have matured is other channels. First and foremost is messaging. And messaging really created a new way of interacting on the customer's term that can be leveraging the mobile, the smartphone of people without requiring any type of mobile application. And second is voice. Progress in the field of machine learning has made transcription of voice back and forth between text much closer to the way we speak. So the coming of those new channels together is the second technology that has kind of reached a tipping point. And last but not least, although from a technology standpoint, it was existing before, the ability to actually barge in a human and escalate seamlessly a bot to a human has made the chatbot completely different. So these are the three technologies that have been there for a while, but they kind of matured lately to reach this maturity, enabling today what we call virtual assistants. Now, if we look forward, there's still a lot of progress that needs to be made, in particular in terms of conversational interactions. The second thing that we see happening is an evolution of bots. Historically, bots have focused on providing back information, and what we see now is bots starting to complete to fulfill the interaction of the customers, becoming a little more transactional, if I may use that term. The third key trend that we see happening is deeper personalization. So personalization is coming in the form of getting context for the inquiry. For example, what was the navigation on the website before starting the conversation with the bot? What is the customer context? What is the sentiment? All those information can be used to actually provide deeper personalization of the conversation. Fourth is analytics. There's already a lot of analytics, but we see that there's growing demand for analytics that addresses two key issues. First, what type of analytics can help make the process to make the bot better, much more iterative? And two, how can we learn from interaction? How can we learn and identify the knowledge gaps to perfect the bot? And finally, there's probably which is the most looking forward type of technology is what I call orchestration. Opus Research has coined the term of metabot. And the vision is that over time, in the interaction, we will have multiple bots, we will have humans working all together in a kind of collaborative manner. And we need a layer to orchestrate this conversation so that you seamlessly pass the customer from one bot to another, or from one bot back and forth with a human. So these are the technologies that I see the most active as we speak in terms of evolution.
Excellent. Gentlemen, anything you want to add to that? Great. All right. Thanks for that answer, Nicholas. Let's go to our next question. It's also on you, looks like. What is the most common mistake made when deploying a chatbot for customer service?
Well, that's a hard one. I wish there was only one. So I'd like actually to point to, I'd like to spin them more as 4 key success factors, and the flip side of the coin is mistakes that are unfortunately often made. The first is the project approach. Bots require an iterative, almost an agile approach. You start small, you learn, and as you learn, you perfect the bot, and you broaden the scope of what the bot can do. What I unfortunately see a lot is company, and with a good intent of minimizing risks, adopting a traditional kind of waterfall project approach. That is not the right way to approach it. Second, and there's no priority order, by the way, between all those points, is the second issue is not setting the proper customer expectations. There's 2 critical expectations that needs to be set. Number one is what it is a customer can expect from the bot. And second, for what type of interaction, for what type of inquiries the bot is best suited. We live in a multi-channel environment. Customers do expect to have the option of all the channels. But at the same time, they are expecting that companies will direct them for given inquiry, questions, or requests to the channel that will be best to complete quickly their request. So those 2 expectations are really, really critical. Third issue is, or third mistake, I should say, is not offering a frictionless, what I call a frictionless fallback to a human. Regardless of all the care you can do, bots sometimes drift or are unable to provide the right answer. And what at the beginning looks like a great experience can very rapidly become a frustrating one. So the way to cope with that is to permanently offer a fallback and access to a human. Last but not least, the issue of underestimating the amount of data and knowledge that is required. A bot needs to be trained, a bot needs to be fed with knowledge, with data, and that is very often and unfortunately an area that is completely underestimated by customers in their project. So agile approach, setting up customer expectation, always providing seamless access to a human, and making sure you properly assess the need for data and knowledge are the four key, I would say, key success factors that I would recommend.
All right, excellent. Our next question here is, it's time for a poll. All right, so let's launch a poll question here and see what is on the mind of some of our attendees. Let's see, the poll is open now. You should see a poll on your screen. If you don't, look for a poll icon in the top right corner. Is that where it's at, of your screen? And make sure you can see the poll on the screen. So while you're completing the poll, let's get a confirmation off screen. Do we have a poll up? Mm-hmm. Okay. While the poll is running, I see. Oh, great numbers coming in. We're going to go on to our next question and return to the poll after we discuss the next question. So this one's on you, Coumadin. The question that we got submitted to us is, how are chatbots able to automate complex customer service interactions?
Sure. It's a great question, and we also need to answer it in terms of what can be done and what should be done, right? So from a best practice perspective, the general guidance is that you want to start with the simple interactions. But obviously there's a lot of complexity in your business, so you would want to automate complex interactions as long as you can do it well, right? So when we look at the complex interactions, again, we can look at complex interactions that should be automated and those that are better handled by humans. Perhaps it's a high-value interaction, perhaps it's a high-consideration interaction. So now when we look at those complex interactions, which are, I would say, relatively low value, or those that you would want to automate without really providing for a differentiated human experience with, the first thing you want to do, again, in talking in theory, anything that is complicated, what do? You break it down into simple pieces, smaller pieces, and then you try to automate those pieces. In practice, let's look at an example. So let's say that, you know, as a consumer, I want my money back. Maybe there's a charge on my credit card I want to dispute, or maybe, you know, I got, you know, a product that I ordered, I received, it's damaged, I want a refund, and perhaps I'm not within your exchange policies, and there's some anxiety on my part, there's some money involved. That's complexity, right? So when we look at the whole experience, it might seem complicated, but when we break it down into simpler pieces, there is a part where you need to get information from the customer. There is a part where somebody in your business is going to make the decision using some discretion whether they want to issue the refund or how they want to manage the dispute. And then there is a part where you want to keep the customer up to date with what's going on with the resolution process. So as we talk through this, there are very specific places in this total experience where you want a human to be involved, which is really the part where the human discretion is involved. All those other areas could be delegated to a bot. It could be a bot that is talking to you to collect information in a friendly manner while recognizing your sentiment and accommodating that part of the journey. Likewise, you can have a bot that keeps you posted on what needs to happen next. And the part that is left to discretion and the human can do it. So there are different ways in which we can kind of break complexity down and find opportunities for automation while improving the experience and reducing the total effort the customer needs to put in.
Okay, thank you, Coumadin. So we're going to briefly look at the results from our poll to see what our results were here. Let's see, it should be on your screen. Let's see if I can get it on my screen so we can discuss that. Can we verify that an attendee can see the poll? Because we're not seeing it over here. Okay, let's see. I'm not seeing our results. Okay, thank you for letting us know. So you see them. Well, let's see.
Secret ballot.
It's definitely secret ballot. Our attendees can see the answers, and we can't see the answers yet. Let's see. Maybe, do you have them there? Can you please show those to us so we can discuss it? Just show us your laptop because we can't see them over here.
Do you need to see the individual results? Is that
I just want to see the poll results. We'll just look on this computer over here.
Yeah, what we see, Nicholas, here is a majority are using it for frequently asked questions, and the other topics are kind of way lower, between 5 to 15%. And I think it's a reflection that the right thing is happening. People are starting small and expanding. And if I want to go back to and expand a bit on what Coumadin was sharing with us, I'm actually a believer that bots will become more specialized. So we spoke about informational bots. We start to see transactional bots that are able to actually accomplish something, interact with a system to fulfill the interaction, the request from the customers. We start to see as well response or answer bots. I don't think there's an established terminology that are helping address more specific, complicated questions, more in a kind of a customer support scenario. We see bots that are focused on providing suggestions to agents. So, and I'm sure there will be other mini categories emerging. So back to the question, what should I do to deal with complex problems? As you break down the problem, as recommended by Coumadin, you want to segment and focus the class of problem to the specialized bot that will do the best job at it. Second, and this ties back to what we discussed in terms of orchestration, you will have over time a layer that will front-end the customer and be able to dispatch complex inquiry to write towards the right bot. Third point, and that would be my conclusion on this one, is at the end of the day, bots are here to work together with humans. And in a perfect world, you want to offload simple, mundane, repetitive questions to bots and free up time of your agent to deal with the more complex part. So one way to look at the problem is actually to free up time of your agent and direct more complex interactions to agents, to humans.
Excellent. So before we go to the next question, we have questions still coming in also on the Q&A window, so our panelists can see those questions. We'll try to jump into some of those if we can. We have a lot of questions to cover today, so guys, you can see the screen. If you want to grab one, please interrupt me and grab one. For now, let's go on to the next question. Nicholas, the question submitted was, what are the most successful methodologies for connecting bots to the ecosystem of data sources used in contact center environments?
Yeah, so I'm not aware of specific methodologies, specific to bots. What I see is that there's actually, in terms of integration, a slew of new integration techniques that were brought by the cloud and that can and should be leveraged in the case of a bot deployment. I would say back to start small and grow, that if you can start deploying a bot with little integration, you should definitely do it and add the integration as you expand the scope of the bots. What I like to do in terms of integration is to look at the various types of integration. So first is the conversation context. So in the case of, for example, a chatbot on the web, you want to be able to retrieve the navigation that took place on the web prior to starting the interaction with the bot. It's also the customer context. So it's typically in a CRM application. In some cases, you might need to identify the customers, potentially to authenticate the customers. We spoke about the transition from just informational bots to transactional bots. So that will require to connect the bot to an application to complete the customer service request. And last but not least, you want to make sure that you are able to pass the context between the bots and humans, or between several bots if you use several bots, to make sure that from a customer perspective, the interaction is really, the conversation is really seamless. Now, I know I took the question, but I also know that integration has been an historical area of focus for Jacada. So probably Coumadin, you want to elaborate a bit on what my answer.
Sure. Yeah, I think you made very good points there, Nicholas. I would suggest that, going back to the surveys, it looks like many of our audience members have implemented bots for frequently asked questions. So first opportunity would be to personalize those FAQs using integration, using customer data, be it from your CRM systems, your channels of engagement, so that you are providing richer, personalized answers. And then taking that one step further, you may already have various self-service capabilities for which you have web services, so that would be the next step to bring that type of integration in so that you can provide more transactional capabilities. And if you push the envelope further, there's also robotic process automation that I'm sure is happening in some of your contact centers, where you have bots that are responsible for performing individual tasks so that humans don't have to be involved. So yet again, there is an opportunity to bring those RPA bots, integrated that into these chatbots, which are providing the front-end customer experience. Thereby, slowly yet gradually, you can increase the degree of automation across the operation.
And those RPA bots can be very useful in scenarios where a web service doesn't exist. For example, maybe the back-end system is an old green screen system that doesn't play well or doesn't play nice with modern web technologies, and the RPA bot can act in replacement of the web service.
Okay. Let's grab our next question here. How is customer service improved using intelligent assistants?
So I like to look at the impact from two perspectives, one the customer and second the business. From the customer standpoint, I would start with the ability with a bot to address a well-known expectation from customers of convenience and speed. The second thing ties back to the fact that bots growingly and messaging are kind of woven together. And a messaging interaction, a type of interaction, is actually great from a customer perspective. You don't have to wait. If you think about it, you give back their time to customers. It maintains context, and in the case of digital text type interaction, it's extremely precise. Finally, when you take a step back, and if you look at a true assistant that has conversational abilities, and number two, that never gets in the way of reaching out to a person, you've got the two elements to provide a great experience. So the experience impact on the customer side is one way to look at the overall business impact. From a company standpoint, I'll start by saying that I want to acknowledge that even if all companies have a focus on improving customer experience, customer service organizations, they still have to improve productivity to reduce their cost. So it's very challenging for them. And what you find is that the bots and assistants provide those organizations with a way to reduce cost without impacting the experience. So this is one of those few technologies that allows to kill two birds with one stone. The bot, of course, by virtue of being self-service, is going to free up some cycles of your agents. But when you look at the big picture, you will also be able, from a business standpoint, to apply those cycles to important interactions, be them complex one, be them high value or high impact interactions. So bots give you the opportunity to revisit how cycles of your most precious resources, people, are going to be allocated. Finally, and again, it's a little bit forward-looking, but we've seen a continued increase of communication channels. We live in a connected world, and the challenge for many organizations is to offer customer service, to offer assistance at any time on any channel. So for many organizations, this scaling is extremely hard. And when you think about it, a bot is always here, can start to pick up the questions and manage this presence across channel and over time.
Okay. Do you want to elaborate on that some?
Sure. I mean, I completely agree. Great points there. Experience has taught me that my belief, based on those experiences, is that cost reduction and a high-quality customer experience do not necessarily have to be mutually exclusive. It's not one or the other. You can have both, and I think intelligent assistants are a perfect technology to provide for that. So, one, it allows you to meet customers where they are in the channel of their choice and provide a quick, low-effort customer experience in a cost-effective manner for the business. It's win-win for everyone.
All right. Let's see what our next question here is. Next question we have here is, what is the best way to implement Chatbot or VCA into the IVR that is seamless to customers?
Sure. Again, it's another interesting question. Although we're talking about chatbots, Nicholas made the point that it doesn't necessarily have to be about chat. We're really talking about conversational engagement, and that can really span multiple touch points beyond not just your website, your mobile application, but also your IVR, and going even further into your personal assistants. Could be your Google Assistant on your phone or Alexa at home. And voice as a medium has really taken on. It's kind of getting a great revival, if you will, with the advances we've seen in natural language understanding. So definitely there are technologies available, as you would know, where you could build a conversational bot and make it available on your existing IVR platforms. But I'd also like to raise a question in response. I guess the question you also want to ask is, since there is a reference to seamless here, you want to really understand what is seamless for your customers. If your customers are more likely to go to a digital channel, let's say a website, to find the phone number and then come into the IVR, perhaps you can give them a seamless experience on that digital touch point. So it's really important whenever you look at touch points, it's really important to look at what journey the customers have been through before they get to a certain touch point, and sometimes there's also an opportunity to engage them proactively even before they come to your website. If you have insights into what's going on in their customer life cycle, if they've just ordered a package like we were talking about, or whether they're just getting onboarded to a new service that you're offering, perhaps you can engage them on that personal assistant that they have in their pockets. Talking about things they have in pockets in smartphones, many of your callers today might be coming in on a smartphone. So you can also augment the voice experience, which is conversational, with a visual experience that is also conversational. Thereby, you can go much farther in terms of driving more self-service and reducing customer effort.
Excellent. Thank you, Kumar. Let's see what our next question is here. Can the chatbot react in real time to the changing mood of the customer that they are speaking to, as opposed to leveraging canned responses no matter what the mood and inquiry? Michael? Michael.
Yeah, another really good question. So this question really speaks to the need to use cognitive services such as sentiment analysis in order for the bot to recognize, is the customer becoming agitated, or are they happy with the service that they're receiving? So what that enables in terms of how you're designing your conversation, take those moods into account so that you can create the conversation that's personalized to recognize which direction a customer might be heading, and then create perfect fallback examples or fallback responses where everything doesn't go according to plan, especially when the customer may be agitated. And I would add here, at some point, when it's needed, don't hesitate to escalate to a live person.
All right. Let's go on to our next question here. Nicholas, this one is for you. What does research tell us about Generation X's and baby boomers' acceptance to automated assistance in the customer service sector?
That's a great question, and frankly, my way of measuring greatness is that I wasn't able to find research on that specific topic. So what there's research on self-service acceptance or tolerance, depending on how you want to articulate things by generation. There is research as well on the preference channel, in particular for messaging channels. But combining the two, I wasn't able to find good research. So let me give a few pointers. ICMI did a piece of research. It's a little old. It's a couple of years old, but it was the foundational one about acceptance of using text mode of interaction that can be extended to messaging for customer service. And bottom line is customers loved it. Already a few years ago, 80% of customers, once explained what they could get out of it, were wanting to have this option. There's another very good source of research that focuses more on the consumer acceptance of new technology. It's the Pew Research Center. So tons of research about new technology and acceptance by generation. If we look at self-service, more specifically, I'll point to two sources. Dimension Data does every year a benchmarking study. It's a very comprehensive one, and you can track the evolution from one year to another. And lately, they have been studying a lot the shift of preferences from voice to digital channel. Likewise, Forrester does a lot of consumer research about the acceptance and desire for self-service. I would say if you go through all those, this research and more, what you will see is kind of obvious conclusion is, number one, newer generation have a preference for starting the interaction using messaging and self-service. What's interesting is to understand the reason why is because they like to start to do the initial stages of the exploration on their terms. And what we see moving from generation Y to Z actually is an even greater desire to be able to do things by yourself. The second thing is we make the assumption that older generation are a little more reluctant to use text or messaging or to use self-service. Indeed, but actually when you look in detail, what you see is there's a much greater readiness and acceptance of older generation to use both. And it means that if properly done, the same type of approach can actually span across all generations.
Excellent.
Nick, if I could add just an anecdotal story there. So when I was managing channels and self-service at Earthlink, a large percentage of our customer base were boomers. They were 55 plus. And, you know, I hear this, the kind of the assumption weekly, pretty much, that it's the millennials that like texting and that like chatting. And we were surprised at the time, and this was a decade ago. We ended up handling a significant portion of our contacts in chat, and had good success with self-service activities as well. And sometimes there were other factors involved, like people that may be getting to the age where they were having hearing trouble, and the voice transactions or the IVR may have caused them trouble, but chat was very easy for them to get their problem solved, and they were very, very happy with that. So sometimes there's other factors to consider. Even though they may have a preference going in, you may show them that a new channel is very, very easy for them, and they'll use it again and again.
Good, good. Let's see, moving on. How can we address multiple topics within a single response?
Well, it's a great question again. And I would say by now you have understood that my measure of greatness is a question that has no short-term answer. So let me elaborate a bit on that. Today, the state of technology is such that natural language understanding is good at detecting single intent. We're just starting, and it's very, very early on, to be able, in a conversation, to actually understand multiple intent. So the first challenge dealing with multiple topic is to understand the multiple intents that are involved. Second, because of the style of communication, you need to actually take the answer and format it in a short and concise way to provide it back to the customer. It's already with simple intent, it's already a challenge. But when you have multiple questions, lumping all together the answers in a precise and concise way is also difficult. So you have a kind of compounding of those two challenges. I'll refer again to my big belief is that the way we should approach bots is not trying to have them do everything, but look at them as tools that allow you to better balance interactions and the load between human and bots. So at this stage, I would recommend to direct questions involving multiple topics, a little bit like what we said before on complex interactions to human. If you do want to do it, the best solution at this stage is to use a bot that is able, once it detects a couple of topics, to suggest similar questions that are a little bit complicated and involve multiple topics, and have the customer select the most relevant question if there's one. And again, regardless of what you do, I would make sure that you never get in the way of the customer experience by trying to push the bot too far beyond what's doable. What do you do if your customer or user thinks your bot is a human? And I love the question because it's actually a topic near and dear to my heart. And the answer is, in a nutshell, you want to make sure it never happens. So I want to point to two best practices. Best practice number one, never ever pretend to be a human. I think it's critical that the bot make it clear that it is a machine. Second, and I mentioned it already several times, you want to make sure that automation never gets in the way of enabling a customer to reach out to a human. So if you weave that seamless access to an agent, to a human, into the experience, then you establish very clearly that there's a bot, that is a machine, and there's a human, and these are disjoint world. Coumadin, any thoughts that you want to add to that?
I think that was spot on, and it's just being candid is the best way to go. And we also talked early on about orchestration and bot specialization, right? So there may also be situations in the future as you explore this landscape further when you have a bot that is engaging a customer on a website, and perhaps there's a human behind the scenes supporting the bot. Maybe there's another bot that is coming to the bot's rescue. So when these types of things happen, it's always useful to be transparent with the customer, or the user of the experience, so that they understand what's going on, and they are also empowered to ask for live assistance at any point in time.
I'm not able to see the slide,
how can you make sure that your bot is able to give customers a human experience that is on par with chatting to a real advisor?
Okay, great. So I think this goes back, and I'll expand a little bit on a point that you made earlier, Nicholas. So, and that is the importance of data. So when you are designing or implementing a chatbot solution, you want to design your conversations based on interactions with live agents. So in order to make them as human-like and as close to a human conversation as possible. You'll take transcripts, historical transcripts from chat agents, from voice agents, maybe even from social agents, and trying to take that learning, both to train the natural language processor, as well as how to design the conversation itself to make it human. And then again, I'll make the point, don't hesitate. When you get to the extent of what the bot's able to do and able to handle very well, don't hesitate to allow escalation to a live advisor.
So next question is for you, Coumadin. We all know it's simple and repetitive, search in a database and pull details for a chatbot. The question is, how can we personalize a simple interaction that looks pretty repetitive and mechanical?
Sure, absolutely. So this is definitely a key aspect of going from what we sometimes internally call at Jacada, the first generation of customer assistance, to the next one. Looking at the questions that came in, there were also some where someone was talking about customer dissatisfaction with chatbots, or there's been some disillusionment with chatbots. So is that really a good experience? I think personalization is a very important theme that can be an answer to those types of challenges with customer satisfaction with bots today. Because when you ask a bot, when you come to a website, when you are requesting assistance, and when you know that you're engaging a bot, we all expect to be talking to like a C3PO on the other side, where we ask something and we want the right answers. We are very demanding as consumers, even when we talk to live persons, live agents on the other side. We are even more demanding when we know that we are talking to this AI thing. So it is absolutely essential to start with personalization. And you can look for all the data you have in your CRM. Just basic customer authentication can lead to very rich personalized answers. So today when I go to the website, let's go back to that dispute scenario. Let's say I booked my flight ticket and I'm trying to cancel it. Maybe I can't get it canceled because of the policies that were in place. And the policy document may be this big, and that's what's available in the knowledge article. Even in an FAQ bot, I get a shorter version of it, but it's not the answer that I'm looking for. It's the answer for a group of customers who may fit into certain types of scenarios, and I still need to read and understand what's going on, and I don't have the patience for that. Personalization can go a long way. It could be as simple as taking my customer data, my itinerary, running it through a simple decision tree, and coming up with the specific answer that's important to me. And this doesn't have to require a lot of effort on your part as a business to provide this level of personalization, because you already have the data, you have the knowledge, there are tools that allow you to do this in a very easy manner without having to write a whole lot of code. So that's a simple example of personalization, and you can also take it further down the road as you look to drive more transactional capabilities.
Yeah, it's much better to say your ticket is not refundable because you purchased it more than 24 hours ago versus a generic, tickets are non-refundable after 24 hours. Make it personal.
The next question is, any tips on the best ways to test the bot to ensure good customer experience? Michael?
So I think there's a few steps here. First I would test the finished bot with the data that I used to build it. So run some of those transcripts and real customer questions through the bot to see how it reacts and do you get good recognition rates from that. Second, I think this is helpful, but to have employees and agents maybe test the bot as well. One additional thing there that you might consider is even have agents use the bot themselves for their own advice while they're helping customers. However, I think you may run into situations where it's friendly fire, right? So your employees and agents are going to know the internal jargon, and they're going to know all the answers oftentimes before they're asked, which is different than what a customer scenario might be. So there's really no substitute for actually using real customers and getting data from them very quickly. So, once you feel comfortable with the results of the initial testing, launch the bot, allow customers to use it, and then make sure you're prepared to iterate quickly. So use data from reporting right away. How often are you going to fallback prompts where the bot didn't recognize what the customer says? Use a feedback loop, thumbs up, thumbs down, did this help you or not? Where did escalation points to agents, where in your conversation did that occur, to point to improvement points in the conversations that need to be improved, and then iterate quickly. You make sure that you're using a platform that allows for agile improvements made by business users. Your business users are going to be closer to the customers than IT resources that are in a different part of the company. If you're relying on internal IT resources to code these changes, you're one further degree away from the customer and having to wait longer to make the improvements that are necessary.
All right. So, Nicholas, I think you still may have control. Let me try to change the slide. Oh, there we go. So it's time for a poll, but I think we lost our poll ability during that technical difficulty. Plus, we have time running short. So let's go ahead and grab our next question here. First initial deployment of chatbot technology. Where's the best starting point for targeted deflection?
So there's, I would say, two major points. And so first, I think we would look at inbound contacts. At what point do you feel like people are about to contact you, whether that be a phone call or a chat or message? The Contact Us page would be a perfect place to start. Perhaps another idea would be to front end your live chats or some of your messaging interactions that may be occurring on things like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. And use the bot to try to self-serve some of these customers, and then where the bot needs help, then escalate to live service. When deciding which use cases to build out first, I would use the 80-20 rule. Try to find those use cases that are high enough volume that you're making an impact, that you're able to automate, a large enough percentage of the incoming questions and intents of the customers, and also try to think about those use cases to start out with, for sure, that might not be automated very well elsewhere. Maybe they're those that the IVR struggles with, or other channels might struggle with, that might be perfect for something that's more visual, like a conversational chatbot, and start there. Now, conversely, I would make the case for outbound notifications. I think Coumadin mentioned this earlier. Try to think about where the customer is in their life cycle and predict ways to automate that next contact. Are they about to contact you? Maybe their status changed with their order or with an insurance claim they may have had, and how to assist that next touch point that they might have by sending them a proactive SMS or push notification that may have a link to the bot, or that could be handled in the SMS itself, rather than just sitting back and waiting on them to call you. All right,
great. Let's see, are we done here with the questions? A couple more maybe. We got to wrap up soon, gentlemen, so make sure our answers are brief, so we can get at least a couple more questions in here. I think we have one or two. What is the best strategy for managing micro content? Nicholas?
Yeah, let me elaborate a little bit on this one, because we got through the Q&A a lot of questions about managing content. Can you automate it? And for the sake of time, I'm going to simply try to address as much as possible of the content issue. So first, let's recognize something, is content is still an issue. Building and maintaining knowledge has been a challenge for almost everyone in the industry as long as I've been in this industry, so many, many years. In addition to that, most of the content is not built for messaging type experience. So the two issues kind of compound themselves. So what I can point to is three approaches that can help recraft content to fit the messaging channel, what I call form factor. So short, precise, this type of, in a type of conversational style of dialogue. And I don't know of any solution that is automated. You can use automation to identify gaps, to direct gaps to experts, but there's no perfect solution. And at the end of the day, an assistant will be as good as the knowledge you put in. So the three model or framework type of approach I've seen, number one is a company by the name of MindTouch. They have technology that can take a large document, so typically a product manual, a large PDF file, notice a product manual, and chunk it automatically into smaller topical pieces. And you can index all those pieces. It's not necessarily the perfect answer to the question, but at least you have chunked things and make them much more actionable. So that's one way to help with this. There's another company directly who helps company build networks of experts. So think of your power users, your partners. They are not people in the company. They are part of the ecosystem of the company, but they know very well the product, and you can harness them to participate and support. And they've built a pretty sophisticated and effective reward system where you can use those resources at a fraction of the price of a typical resolution by in-house resources. And you can actually use experts to crowd power small responses. The third approach I can mention is the one that a company by the name of Zendesk introduced a few weeks ago. They created a tool that basically not just identify the gaps, but try to entice agents to create a piece of content or reformat the pieces of content that is missing. I find it intriguing. That being said, I must say that although agents are ideally positioned to help, I know from experience that it's super hard to add to their plate when they're already so busy. So anyway, I would look into these approaches, but thank you so much for the question, because not only the data and the knowledge is pretty hard, but you need to format it in the form of small responses, which is very difficult.
Okay. Thank you, Nicholas. Next quick question. Coumadin, is self-learning even possible with a chatbot, and how is it implemented?
Okay. This is one of those questions, building on top of the C3PO analogy that we started with. It's really important to go in with reasonable expectations. But putting the expectations aside, there are possibilities, right? There are definitely capabilities that you can leverage as you look to design a chatbot which has various pieces of its intelligence that develop on an ongoing basis. So for instance, let's say I'm at home and I need help troubleshooting my TV remote. Rather than trying to explain to the agent which remote I'm using or trying to pick from a set of pictures, perhaps I can just send in a picture of my remote, and the bot, using computer vision, can understand what type of remote that is, right? So likewise, bots can understand language, as we've been talking about. They can understand sentiment. They can learn about facial recognition, motion detection. So there are very targeted cognitive capabilities that are available, and these targeted cognitive capabilities do have the ability to learn. And these are definitely things that you should look to assemble as part of a broader conversational engagement experience you're putting together for your customers. Now, the other question to ask is also, what about the natural language responses? Can these be automatically generated rather than having a business person decide how exactly they want to curate and come up with that response? Again, the answer is yes. Whether you want to do that for your consumer experience or not, whether you want to do it today or tomorrow, that's definitely, that's a bigger question. But there is technology for natural language generation, and it really comes down to how you want to moderate and define that experience for your customers. And, at least what we've seen working with our clients, and the best practices of projects that succeed are those where you use targeted cognitive capabilities to build an experience that is based on past interaction data. It could be phone interaction data, call interaction data, email interaction data, but the total dialogue and the total experience is typically put together by a business person, so it does require upkeep, and not all aspects of your bot may be self-learning, and if you ask me, I would say that's a good thing for today.
Okay, thank you, Coumadin. So we're at the top of the hour, but we have 2 more questions we want to try to address if you can hang with us for a little while longer. These are folks who submitted questions during registration, so we want to make sure we try to get to those questions if we can today. So let's see, make sure who they belong to real quick, Coumadin and Nicholas. So Nicholas, your first one of our last 2. With so many chatbot vendors, this is a good one to ask because I think that's a big question we had actually asked several times. How do you make sense of the market and make a short list?
Yeah, this one is pretty hard. There's indeed a lot of players, and things are not going to get better. Moreover, there's a kind of continuum between simple scripted bots and true conversational assistants, and many vendors are kind of confusing all of them. That's actually why we created with Opus Research this landscape. So for the sake of time, if you're interested by this topic, I suggest you drop your email address in the chat box, and we will share with you 2 things, the vendor landscape and the functional blueprint that includes, that provides a kind of decomposition of the technology needed that help you to address this issue. Now, to get a little more specific, I'm going to assume this is your first bot. My recommendation number 1 is be very clear on your business goals, and then zero in on the type of bots that will yield, I should say, the highest return, the channels you want to support, and the type of integration that are needed. With these 3 criteria, I would build a long list that meets, and you can do your research online, and you can create a long list. Then I would do a light pre-selection process, typically in the form of webinars, 60, maybe 90 minutes. And what I would focus during this one-to-one with vendors is understand the conversational abilities, their references, the domain expertise, the type of project methodology they can offer. And if you have done your homework defining the business goals, number 1, if you are open and candid sharing them, including the questions you might have, I bet you will very rapidly be able to zero in on your short list. The numbers of vendors, frankly, depends on the cycles that you can allocate for a deeper dive from 3 to 7. And what you will through this process do, first you will learn a lot, and by getting different perspectives from different vendors on the same topics, it will kind of give you a good reality check. So that would be, in the short remaining time, my recommendation to tackle this issue. But it's a key issue.
I didn't mean to rush you by changing that question screen there, Nicholas.
But you did.
Well, speaking of time, the last question is about time. What is a typical implementation period for a chatbot?
It can be really short. Well, it can be a few weeks. It could be, a few months. I guess in the spirit of Agile, you really want to focus on use cases. Our recommendation is to identify use cases and try to use it across touch points so that you start with an omni-channel experience that's cohesive and reduces effort for the customer for the given use case in their customer life cycle. That way you can maximize your bang for buck and do it quickly as well.
Excellent. Didn't mean to rush you either, but I do want to respect the time of our attendees, so we'll have to close out the webinar today. It's been a very, very informative webinar. So thank you again, Nicholas, Coumadin, Michael, for your valuable insights on what makes an exceptional chatbot. Due to the number of questions that have still been coming in for the webinar, we'll respond to you individually via email after the event. We hope you gain valuable insights regarding chatbots, virtual customer assistants, and artificial intelligence solutions, and how easily you can utilize it to enhance your organization's customer service. A replay of the event will be available soon on Jacada.com, and if you would like a copy of the slide deck, please, well, there's really no slide deck. In this case, it's just questions, so you can review the questions during the event if you watch the replay. And so once again, thank you for attending today, and visit us at Jacada.com, and have a wonderful day. Thanks again.
Thank you.